the staff. Good morning, Chris G. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Morning.
Excellent. Thank you. Christopher, are you still with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you. We're just trying to get the audio to come through the TV instead of the computer. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness side there.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Center this better.
Yeah, watch the NBA finals on my TV. It's blacked out. Channel 4, I don't know,
Channel 7.
or Channel 7, it's blacked out. It said,
Oh, you got Comcast.
I've got.
All right, I got 9 o'clock. Let's get started.
We're ready.
Good morning, everybody. Hope everyone's having a great day to start off so far. Let's get rolling. So welcome to June. Let's get into our June salesperson go-to-market call. As always, we'll get into our performance review and see where everyone shook out for the month. So Pinckney, you're up first, 91%. Total sales department new and used, gross profit as a percentage of target achievement. So nice job. You guys got above the 90%, which we always like to see is kind of the minimum qualifier. So way to go there. Cadillac, you guys fell just short of that 90% threshold. You were at 87% overall. And Chevy came in at 97%. So nice job to the Chevy team over there. You guys finished top of the board and took home the crown for the month of May. So way to go. Outstanding job to Perry, Cole, Fadi, and the team over there. We'll get into our top performers for the month of May. Taking home that first spot, we had Vince. Coming in second place, we had Cam. And rounding out our top three over at Pinckney, we had Zach. So way to go to you top three. Nice to see Zach, you get on the board there and join the crew. For overall metrics, breaking it down here as always, taking a look, you can see there are top three there with Vince at 28, Cameron at 18.5, and Zach finishing it with 16.5. Also give a few shout outs, Vince again. You are the highest percentage to executive level when it comes to units sold for the calendar year. And then Ryan over at Cadillac, you are leading the pack when it comes to gross profit. So keep it up. We're about halfway through the year, and let's see you guys keeping pace. And then everyone else, let's kick it into high gear and let's get you guys on that same kind of path. So again, nice job to the three of you. Way to go. Talk a little bit about June and what our game plan is for the month of June here. It's the second half of the year push. And there's no better way to kind of give an example of it than what happened last night. I mean, if you watched the NBA Finals, you saw the tale of two halves, right? The Knicks were down big in the beginning there, and then the second half, they kicked it in high gear and they won the game. So, what we're looking to do here is a similar pattern. If we're off pace or if you're off your individual numbers, now is the time to do some self-assessment. Are you on pace? Are you on track for your goals? And answer it honestly, yes or no. If it's off, maybe it's time we need to do some reevaluation. Was the goal too high in the beginning or was it too low maybe? And maybe you are so far in front of it that, we need to do some reassessment here and give yourself another challenge for the second half of the year. And then be consistent. You know, again, if you are pacing, hey, trust the process, keep going, you know, stick with it. If you're off pace, don't give up, you know, strive for excellence. And obviously believe. You know, again, if I go to last night, or I give you some figures here at the bottom, there are some famous sports figures. You know, of course, the first thing they're going to tell you is that they believe in their success and they believe in what they can do and their ability, and there's no limits. So champions keep playing until they get it right. You know, I had someone once tell me that amateurs practice until they win or until they can win, and champions, they practice until they can't lose. You know, there's no other options for them other than being successful. So that's our game plan is, hey, let's make this the best second half of the year you possibly can, and let's push it forward and see what we can do. All right, sharing a customer success story. Let's go through this and let's see who's going to be pulled for our wheel of names. Let's see if we have better luck this month than last month. Okay, is Alex available on the call over at Chevy?
He is not.
All right, let's roll again. All right, Andrew, I see you over there at Pinckney. So what can you share with us for last month? Give us a customer success story, if you would, please.
So I had a customer coming in, they were looking at three models or three vehicles, a Ford Explorer, Chevy Traverse, or a Grand Cherokee. They came in there, checked out the Ford. They looked at our Jeep Grand Cherokee, and then they wanted to look at the Chevy Traverse. I knew we had a 2025 on our lot with about 5,000 miles on it. So instead of having them go to a different dealer, Chevy store, anything like that, I had them check out ours here. I think that having them trying to shop at your lot instead of other dealers, trying to do that, I think is very good. And they ended up taking the Grand Cherokee. So
Nice. Yeah, I would agree with you. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that with us. Know your inventory, right? Know what you have available. And even if it's something that maybe you think we have or we don't have, then we have resources obviously available at your fingertips so we can verify that kind of stuff. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, let's get them to shop with us versus cross shopping us elsewhere and blowing an opportunity. We know the math, we know the stats that customers are going to visit 1.4 dealerships on average before making a final decision. So if they're here butts and seats, that's our time to shine and put it together. So nice job. Way to go. Let's talk a little bit about compliance. Okay, so remember we added this section last month. This month what I wanted to hit on was a little bit of industry terminology and understanding. Okay, so I don't know if anybody's heard these terms before. I know our managers and our F&I managers have, because we've done some AFIP training in the past. But I don't know if we've really brought this up in a generalized discussion. But realize that in our industry, the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, they can basically write up a violation to a dealership for these different types of practices. And these are, the first one here, the UDAP, unfair or deceptive acts or practices. Basically, what that means is it's going to prohibit the dealership from engaging in practices that are unfair or misleading to the consumer, right? The FTC exists to protect the consumer and making sure that they're not being taken advantage of in the marketplace. So the FTC doesn't just cover the auto dealerships, they cover all different types of industry, mostly retail, and they can assess or assign and write up a ticket, if you will, for a UDAP violation. They can also write up a UDAAP violation. Okay, this one adds on unfair, deceptive, or abusive acts or practices. So it basically is an expansion on the UDAP by adding the abusive practices. And typically these are violations that are written up in the business office. Okay, where now And not only is it going to be misleading and okay, it's kind of in a little bit of a gray area, but you straight up, had an abusive act towards a consumer. So with some terminology disclosed and we kind of level set on that, let's talk about what dealerships need to be aware of. So I put this link in here since I'm going to send out this PowerPoint at the end of our talk. If you want to go through the entire thing, you're more than welcome. Just follow the link. It'll take you to LinkedIn, but I pulled some data from it that's highlighted here in yellow that we need to be aware of, because even at your desk as a salesperson, you are the first frontline person that needs to be in compliance with FTC regulations. So reading here, what is most concerning about UDAP statutes is that they are catch-all. And basically, they can be an interpretation and enforcement of them is constantly evolving. Just because a particular act or practice isn't specifically prohibited by law, it can be litigated as a UDAP violation if it's viewed as improper merchant conduct. These statutes allow for almost any unresolved customer complaint to snowball into a potentially devastating lawsuit. And that's a pretty legal way to say, look, the FTC is generic on purpose with what they consider a UDAP violation to be. So that way they can catch behavior that they deem to be misleading from the consumer standpoint. When you look at actual enforcement actions and count cases against dealerships, there's typically one common element: the perception that the dealer was less than completely honest with the consumer. So if a dealer employee is accused of being dishonest with the customer, either by commission or omission, they may end up in a courtroom or worse. Okay, a couple keywords there is going to be the commission or omission. Whether you did it knowingly or you did it unknowingly and you weren't aware, it still may end up in a bad situation. So here's some things that we need to know about. First one here, no customer complaints are necessary, and even inadvertent violations are actionable. Advertising violations are a common example of these principles. A non-complaint ad in itself is enough to create a violation, even if there's no evidence that consumers have been harmed. Okay, what I want you to think about this is things like a Facebook ad. If you put a post out on Facebook and you have misleading pricing on that ad, and maybe no one was harmed by it, but it still exists out there, and you didn't mean any harm by it, it's still an actionable UDAP violation that the FTC can come at you for. 2, even innocent misrepresentations can be actionable under UDAP statutes. All that's required is proof that a practice has a tendency or capacity to deceive even a significant minority of consumers. It usually involves a situation where the dealer employee should have known or could easily have found out that his statement to the plaintiff was false, but didn't bother to verify his statement before making it. You can't claim the I didn't know. You should know, right? This is a business. We have access to all this types of information. We know the regulation, we know the law. And just like getting a speeding ticket, you can't claim that I didn't know as a defense. 3, a common misconception by dealership staff is that only written agreements are enforceable and verbal agreements are irrelevant once the customer signs a contract, which is simply not the case with UDAP claims, which can be founded on verbal misrepresentations, verbal promises made to the customer that the dealer fails to deliver upon, the failure to disclose, or ambiguous statements that are technically accurate but deceptive as interpreted by the consumer. So it's not just what's written on paper, but it's what we say too that we have to be careful of. Okay, a few more here. Number 11, it's no defense to a UDAP claim that the challenged practice is engaged in throughout any industry or customary business conduct. Regulators frequently penalize those unlucky dealers that get caught in order to intimidate others. We can't say that this is just how the industry is and think that we're going to be fine. Again, that's typically when FTC wants to make an example. and uses that to their advantage to write up one dealer, and hopefully it scares the rest of the dealers into place. 12, literally true statements can be deceptive. A practice is deceptive if the overall net impression of the representation, not just the specific explicit claim, is deceptive. One example might be advertising a prior rental vehicle as a one owner. Another could be an ad that claims 0 down lease, but in reality, the first payment and various fees are due at signing. Okay? Look, that could be a true statement, but if it's deceptive to try and hook people and bait people, then they're going to view that as a violation. 13, a statement or omission may convey more than one reasonable meaning, and if one of those meanings is deceptive, it violates UDAP statutes. Here's an example. When a dealer employee claims that a service contract is included in a payment quote, a reasonable meaning to a consumer is that included means free or at no additional cost, right? So terminology comes into play. We know it's not included. We know it's not free. We know there's a cost associated with it. So it's an addition. It's not an inclusion. 18, high pressure sales tactics have been cited as unfair trade practices in lawsuits and regulatory actions. Examples include intimidation, coercion, personal disparagement, emphasizing social difficulties, refusing to let customers leave until they sign contracts, using relays of salesmen until the consumer succumbs, and preventing consumers from taking the time to consider a decision and its consequences. So while you should always be closing, care should be taken not to overstep the line. Again, that's where we are taking advantage or the abusive part starts to come into play. And the last one here, 20, misrepresenting the nature or import of documents being signed is likely to be considered deceptive. Keep in mind that statements like just sign next to all the X's can lead to problems. Consumers need to know, and we need to educate them on what they're signing and what they're doing. So bring this all up to say, be aware of stuff like this, guys. Our advertisements, if you noticed on our websites, they've changed a little bit to be more compliant with FTC regulations. If you heard these 97 dealers, basically they got taken to the woodshed for the rest of us, and they got written up big time on some major violations that they were doing. And now we have some new regulations that came into play where if we're going to advertise pricing, we have to advertise it to where everybody can get said price, or we have to be able to disclose certain things like you see right here. We have to disclose our doc fee. Our itemized registration fee has to be disclosed. And if we're going to advertise that price, you can see right there, everyone priced before tax, title, and license. So we got to be aware of that, if you're looking at our ads, they kind of changed. And if you're going to be doing any Facebook posting on your own, we really want you mimicking what we already have on these ads, so that way you don't get yourself in any kind of trouble. And then you can see, the Willys here, the Gladiator, there's the employee price and there's the everyone price. We know we obviously have a large population that's employee pricing. So we do need to be able to have some advertisements to be able to market to those folks. But we can't just advertise at one price now. We need to be able to advertise the two different pricing, and we show what that payment is per month for 48 months and what it takes with $2,999 down. And obviously you got your disclosure at the bottom of the listing there that goes into further detail. So basically, to sum this section up, what we're looking to have you do is, number one, be educated, know the regulations, know what we can do, what we can say, what we can't say. Clearly explain vehicle pricing, financing terms, warranties, any add-on products. Most of those times we're not getting involved in those conversations anyways, because that's where the business manager is handling that. And that's done by design too, so we don't put ourselves in a catch-22. Present all cost and fees up front, no surprises. Again, we don't want to do the whole on the phone bait people in with, yeah, you can get it done with nothing down. That may be a true statement, but it may not. So we need to be careful of what we're doing there. Ensure advertisements and verbal statements are accurate and consistent. The verbal is the piece that I want to make sure we hit on. You are accountable and liable for what you say. Give customers time to review documents and ask questions. Don't rush them through and try and just quickly have them glance through stuff. Make sure they know what's going on. Document customer decisions and obtain required signatures and disclosures. UpLogic is a great opportunity to basically log notes as what's going on, what's happening with this customer. So if there ever was a situation, you got a defense with written word. If you do everything verbally and you don't document anything, what leg do we have to stand on? Consistently audit old and new social media posts. That was the big one I wanted to hit on with everybody and saying, hey, I'm glad we're using Facebook Marketplace and we want to be using that. It's a great tool, but make sure you're auditing that kind of stuff. And if the car's been sold, make sure you remove the listing, because if we still got that car listed on Facebook, but yet the car's not here, that's a potential misleading violation, and that could be a UDAP violation with the FTC. So make sure you go through that stuff, pay attention to it. Maybe once a week you go in there, you clean stuff up, so you can be on top of that sort of thing. If we have any questions on this section, either stop me or at the end, let's ask it and make sure we're on the same page. Social media warning, without having to read this whole big thing here, I put this out here again for your general knowledge, but realize this came from CBT News, which is a automotive resource. The price you post is no longer just marketing. It's technically an official offer and commitment to the customer. For years, dealership social media teams have treated vehicle posts like a digital window sticker with little extra sparkle. Only $3.99 a month. Huge savings, today only. This won't last, or $5,000 off MSRP. Drive it home today. But the FTC's March 13th, 2026 warning letters to those 97 dealers I told you about sharpened the rules of the road and made one thing pretty explicitly clear. If we post a price that the dealership can't honor, then that's a violation. And, without, again, going through this whole big thing, you're going to see here the violation could be up to $53,088 per violation. Okay, so it ain't cheap. And the FTC wants to be paid right then and there on the spot. So we got to watch what we're doing. Like I said, pay attention to your post. If you go with what the company has posted on our sites, you're going to be fine. If you start to deviate off of that, you may want to run it by a manager, run it by Jen, our digital marketing coordinator, myself, Ross. We'll be able to help you out if you just want to be able to check it. No problem there. All right. That wraps up the compliance piece. Now let's get into a little bit of a learning activity. Again, you're going to see my quote there: amateurs practice until they get it right, but professionals practice until they can't get it wrong. It's just muscle memory. And that's what we're trying to build and focus on. So, keep practicing, keep going at it to the point where it becomes muscle memory for you. Our question, a little fun one here for you today. So put your answers in the chat when you think you got a good response to this one here. What was the first animal that was cloned? Do you know what that animal was? Perry says pig. And what else we got? Sheep for Cadillac. Pickney, you guys got an answer? Got a response to that one or no idea? Sheep. Okay. So you're right. How do you know that? Cadillac, come off mute. I'm curious. How did you guys know that one?
Well, they just told me I know all kinds of useless info. And but yeah, we knew that one right off the rip.
Yeah, I found that a couple weeks ago and I was like, what the heck? So there you go. There's a sheep. That was the first animal that was cloned. Poor little sheep. All right. Let's talk about, what we're actually going to get into for learning activity is creating a deal file. This is a quick one. This isn't too advanced, but let's say we come back from a test drive or we get off the phone, we need to get a quote from the desk. Making sure that we look at these signals that the customer may be sending us. If the customer's showing interest, well, the signals may be they're asking about price, or they want to sit down, and they want to engage with numbers. Okay, you're on the right path. If the customer's hesitant, their signals may be, I want to look at another car, or they're hesitant to sit down. Andrew talked about that, where they were looking at 3 different cars, right? Looking at Traverse, looking at Grand Cherokee, and looking at another vehicle. You know, finding which one fits for them, and then, okay, let's go down that avenue. And then once you kind of see that, hey, they're clicking with this car, we can move forward to that next step. Or we can update, hopefully, the CRM with the right VIN number. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about that on the next page here, but we need to have the right information for the desk. The desk can't do their job unless we do our job properly. Or if we make a mistake or we don't have the right information, it slows down the desk and the entire process gets thrown out of whack. Collect driver's license, insurance, registration, whichever information you can get from the customer, the better, so we can be as accurate as possible. Driver's license obviously is going to show us their specific zip code too. So if it's a new car, we're going to be able to see the correct rebate information and make sure we're pulling accurate details. Continue through the sales process, obviously. And we go on from there. Okay, creating that deal file. Well, remember, right? New car. Look, we need to be getting a little bit back to this. We kind of gotten off pace. I've noticed a little bit with making sure we're pulling the right information. That deal information sheet wasn't just a, hey, Genesis wants me to do this just to do this type of thing. This sheet was meant to be able to give the desk as much information as possible so they can work efficiently and smoothly. And B, if you needed to go and handle something else, the desk doesn't have to wait for you to get back to find out some of these answers to these questions. They can continue on through the process. So deal info sheet, of course, vehicle invoice on a new car. Yeah, we need that. We need to know what car we're going to be writing up here. And I need the incentives, and those incentives need to be accurate. If I got to always double check your work because I don't trust that you're pulling the right incentives, you're slowing down the entire bus here. And we know time kills all deals. So used car, of course, deal info sheet is still applicable in that case. And then, hey, if we can pull off maybe the vehicle description page from one of the websites that shows the car, VIN number, maybe, the price, but again, our lot price, if it's a walk-in, is going to be a little bit different. So you may not need to get into that, but it's situation dependent. Again, we're just looking to be able to give as much information as we possibly can to the desk to do their job. So, interacting with the desk, right? Here's my guy that's back for you. He gave me incentives for a Ram, invoice for a Grand Cherokee, and their Logic profile shows a Pacifica. What does that accomplish, right? Who's going to benefit from that? Now the desk has to go back and fix mistakes, or they're going to ask you to go back, and now you're taking more time to have to fix stuff instead of slowing down and doing it right the first time. Okay? Amateurs practice till they get it right. Professionals practice till they can't get it wrong. It needs to just become muscle memory, so that way the whole thing can work and operate the way that it's intended, to where we can get the customer through the process smoothly, and that we're not making mistakes, right? We're not costing us time and effort to have to fix stuff. We can keep moving forward. So getting a deal quote sheet, well, we need to have proper communication. Okay, that's the other piece of this. If the manager and you are not on the same page, the manager is going to be putting one thing together at the desk and you're talking oranges over here potential. I don't know. So approach the sales manager with a complete customer summary. How many times does the desk have to go and ask you for further details? If you've done it enough, you know what they're going to ask by now. Make sure you bring them the context. What's going on? Clearly state the vehicle of interest, stock number, and customer situation up front. And be ready to answer questions about the customer's budget, their timeline, buying motivation. And if you're not asking those questions, start asking those questions. These are questions that are beneficial that we need to know to be able to, again, price out accordingly. Present a professional, organized request. We do this every day, guys. We need to be professionals is what we do. Okay? Follow up promptly once the quote is prepared and deliver it to the customer while it's fresh. And make a sale. Go close it up. Bring the right documentation. So we need proper communication, and we need to bring the right stuff. Complete a deal information sheet with all those details filled in, stock number, of course, current pricing information, anything that we can bring to the desk that would be beneficial. Credit app, if it's applicable, trade-in details, rebates, of course, special program eligibility, manager approved pricing worksheet. What do we got going on that we need to be aware of to be able to put the right stuff in front of the customer? So with that, my closing comments, again, second half of the year push. We're right on the cusp of that second half mark, and now we need to make sure that we finish strong. UDAP and UDAAP compliance is going to require accountability from all of us. That's why I present it to you, is it's not just something that's meant to be housed with the ownership, management, executive teams, but we all need to be on the same page with this kind of stuff because it all falls on our shoulders. And then create a deal file like a pro, and communicate clearly so we can win. We can get that deal. We can close it up. Okay? Any questions, comments, or concerns from anybody? I'm looking in the chat. I don't see nothing. I see nobody moving, so it looks like we're good. And then I'll leave you with this. There are far better things ahead than any relief behind. So if you had a bad month last month, it wasn't what you were expecting, whatever the case may be, you leave it in May. We march forward in June, and we make June the best one yet. So with that, have a great rest of your day, and thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.